Hi there, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Copilot Leet Speak, the series where we talk to AI security experts from around the world. Today, I've got Brandon joining me. Welcome, Brandon.
Thanks, Sarah. Happy to be here.
So, before we get into this, of course, as I've asked every guest so far, can you tell us who you are, what you do, and yeah, what do you do at Microsoft? And I guess I was going to say why you're on my couch, but of course this is a remote recording, so why you're sat
Yeah.
at your laptop talking to me.
Sure. So my name's Brandon Dixon. I've been in cybersecurity my entire career, building analyst tools, tracking espionage actors, and now building products. I've been part of Microsoft now for close to 3 years, and I run our Copilot for Security product offering.
Now, we've already had a few folks come on, and I'm sure you know them well. We've had Ryan and Mark, and we're going to have some other folks on the series talk about Copilot for Security. But you've been leading most of the things that we've been doing in the Copilot space. So, um, obviously, Copilot is now GA or generally available, but of course, you've been working with customers with this product for quite a few months now because, of course, we
hmm
do have previews and private previews before GA. So, can you tell me what you've learned from customers and what's gone well? What are the downsides? What have we learned so far?
I think we've learned a lot. With any sort of new technology, it takes time for people to adopt and understand how to best leverage it within their workflows. What's been working really well with a lot of our customers is meeting them where they are. And so when we think about generative AI, I think one of the biggest barriers to entry is the fact that you have to learn this new system and the idiosyncrasies of it. So when we were designing the product, we have two different experiences. We have our standalone portal that's a little bit more visionary and uses natural language to drive the product. And then for each of our products across Microsoft, be it Defender XDR, Purview, Intune, Entra, we provide what we call an embedded experience. And that's been working really well. So meeting customers where they are and having them have generative AI directly merged into their product offering, where they don't have to think about a prompt and they just get the benefit of it, has been surprisingly successful. Customers come to us and they say that it's saving them time, it's making them feel like they're more effective at doing their job and the workflows that they have. And I'd say areas where it's not working so much or there's room for improvement is the fact that it's just a new technology. And so there's going to be issues where we might face like a fabrication. So some of the results may come back and they may not be exactly what we want or what the customer wants. But even those fabrications, more commonly referred to in the public as hallucinations, aren't too bad because we provide feedback mechanisms within the product, and that's why we have previews. We want to collect customer feedback and make sure that we're learning from them and then optimizing the system. So I'd say by and large, like we've learned a lot from customers, what it is that they want to see in a product, how they want to interact with this type of technology, where they foresee it giving them benefits and saving them time. And we've got a tremendous backlog already formed.
That's really good. Would you say what are the you mentioned there that Copilot for Security is helping with certain problems and making customers more efficient. But are there any what are the biggest problems that you found Security Copilot is helping to address for customers?
So I think like anything around a lot of information that needs to be processed, which is pretty common across security. So I'll pick a couple examples here. When you're looking at an incident, for example, that incident might be comprised of several alerts, and those alerts all have information that make up the incident. And it requires someone to actually go through all of those alerts to understand and contextualize what's being presented to them. So typically, an analyst would have to go through, and maybe they're forming this summary in their heads. They're trying to build the story, if you will, of what actually went on. Who was the user involved? What devices? What other pieces of technical artifacts might be available? And that's an area where Copilot comes in and helps. So it's able to take something like all of those alerts from an incident and summarize them into an easy to read and digestible format. And the benefit of that, obvious, is, as a user, I don't have to write that down. But it also reduces the cognitive load on the analysts. So they're not having to go through each one of those individual alerts and understand every piece of it. Instead, they can read the summary and use that as their starting point. I'd say another example that we found where generative AI is working well is high intellectual tasks or complex tasks that require training and a lot of work, paired with the dimension of also taking a lot of time. So as an example there, you might have a command line argument or some PowerShell script. And for a junior analyst, that might be out of reach. So they actually don't understand the components of what that script might do. And Copilot's able to come in and explain step by step what the script is doing, generate sort of a hypothesis, if you will, as to whether or not it's malicious or suspicious, and then give back the confidence and the evidence that goes along with it. So I'd say that's very two simple examples that we see, but those are common across the security operations space and something that our customers do day in and day out. And so having the machine help assist them in that process and reduce some of that work that's needed on their end goes a long way.
Mm. Would you say as well, one of the things that I think we've been using as a phrase is that Copilot for Security will be democratizing security for everyone. So do you think, given there is a skill shortage in the security industry worldwide, that it will also help maybe plug some of those gaps, particularly in smaller businesses where they may be struggling to get the headcount that they need to do security?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it cuts both ways. For the smaller businesses, we often see that an IT or a network administrator might be playing the role of a security
Mm.
operator as well. And in fact, it's usually an IT admin that's in that position. And so they're doing the best they can with security, which is never what we would want our customers experiencing because it means that their defenses may not be as high. So there's a big opportunity there. Just taking like the fact that Copilot's able to provide summarization of a lot of data, able to produce step-by-step guidance on how to resolve a particular issue or how to remediate a particular problem, rich context that might serve as information to help guide what the next steps might be. So I think that user benefits tremendously. They also benefit by getting upskilled. So that script analysis case where an IT administrator may not be familiar with that type of thing, all of a sudden they have that skill available to them because Copilot's able to assist. On the larger company side, what we see is a bit of the same. So our hope is that um, companies will be able to hire folks that maybe have less experience because they're able to use a Copilot to assist them and up level their skills overall to make them more impactful in their day-to-day job. But we also see within senior analysts the fact that providing those summaries, the script analysis, analyzing a vulnerability, producing a threat actor report, looking at compliance-based issues, all of these things accrue to saving sometimes a matter of minutes, but other times a matter of hours. And I think everybody benefits in that regard. And so we should expect to see more junior people be able to enter the workforce using Copilot. And we should expect to see senior folks save some time and reclaim some of that time so that they can spend it more, efficiently, maybe on proactive items and defending the business.
Yeah, it's. I think it's gonna help people across the board, right? It doesn't matter
Yeah.
what size business. And how is, of course, Microsoft historically has always worked very closely with our partners to help implement our products. But specifically with Copilot, can you talk a little bit about how our partners are going to help support customer security needs with Copilot for Security?
Yeah. I mean, one of the things when I talk with customers that they're most excited about, and this is what excites me too, having been in their position before of going to a multitude of different tools. When I talk with them, they sort of express the frustration that security is highly fragmented, that they have to buy solutions from a myriad of different vendors, and they're often stitching these together. And even customers that are using all of the Microsoft products, in some cases, they might have to go to different interfaces to get the information that they need to be able to do their job effectively. And so when we look at the opportunity here, it shouldn't just be that Copilot is making Microsoft products better. There's an opportunity to make all products better across security, IT, compliance, management, et cetera. And so when we work with partners, we've had a tremendous amount of excitement in this regard because they see the fact that generative AI allows a user to just prompt the system in natural language, asking questions, and that they can be on the receiving end of providing the answers. And so we've had a tremendous amount of interest from partners. Over 100 plus have signed to work with us and develop plugins within our ecosystem, and many of them, we're releasing as part of the product, and we're going to continue to release over time. So we expect to see that ecosystem grow and grow. And part of that value is the fact that you could use Copilot for Security in that standalone interface to start solving problems by stitching together the first party Microsoft solutions along with the third party solutions, all with natural language.
I think that's going to be really exciting. I love plugins and integrations with third parties. I know I've said this before, and people may know I used to work in the Sentinel product group. So of course, in Microsoft Sentinel, we had loads of integrations with third
Yeah.
parties, and I think that was a really valuable thing. And one of the feedback that we got the most was we want more integrations, right, with as many third parties as we can.
That's driving a majority of the feature requests that I get right now is it's not around the particulars of the product itself. I think people log into the product and they get a sense of how it operates and they see within the embedded experiences how they can benefit from generative AI. I think those minimal experiences then translate into excitement. And so often what I see is a large request of third-party integrations that they want done with these partners to bring those capabilities into the system.
So, Brandon, you talked about the plugins and working with partners, but can you give us a sense of what that might look like through 2024, and also for those partners who maybe want to get on board with Copilot for Security but haven't yet? Can you talk a little bit also about what they would need to do?
Sure. So for us in 2024 and really for as much as the customers demand it, we're going to continue to invest in the partnerships that we have. And the good news is for anybody that's interested in engaging with Copilot for Security, we have an extensibility framework available to us today. And so this is something that's going to evolve over time. We're obviously leveraging a new technology, but what's not new is onboarding partners and being able to kind of give them the documentation and the materials they need to be successful. And so we do have an extensibility framework in which a partner can build a plugin today. That same extensibility framework also goes to our customers. And so if customers want to develop their own custom plugins, they can do so using the interfaces that we have, and they can upload those directly to Copilot for Security, where it doesn't have to necessarily go to Microsoft. And on the partner side, we're working with various independent software vendors and MSSPs in order to kind of take their solutions and embed them within the product, but also frame them within a marketplace. And so we want our customers to be able to browse, search, identify the plugins that are of interest to them that meets their needs, be it a third-party solution or, again, a first-party solution, or something entirely custom, and then make that available within the product. So we have a pretty rich and extensive environment. Obviously, this is going to be continuing to shape up. We'll use the partner feedback to drive that, and we'll also use the customer feedback to drive the extensibility framework as well.
That's really cool that folks can go and even now in very early days of Copilot, go and create their own stuff. That's great. So moving, shifting gear a little bit. Obviously, Copilot is now GA, but also, which is an important consideration for our customers, is the pricing model. Now, we announced a new pricing
Definitely.
model to go with Copilot's GA. So can you talk a little bit about that, just so everyone can be clear and understand how we're going to do that?
Yeah. We've spent many months talking about pricing and packaging and looking at the optimal solution. You have a new technology like this. I think one of the biggest considerations that you have to make is what is the cost of ownership. And so when we took a look at pricing, we looked at all sorts of different things by per seat, by entitlement, and where we ultimately landed was on a consumptive side. And so we want to provide a consumption pricing that's a provisioning unit that customers will deploy using Azure, and then they'll effectively get charged on that provision capacity. So it ends up being $4 per hour for them to leverage Copilot. And what's attractive about this solution is that the initial cost of ownership is incredibly low. So to get started with Copilot, it's just a matter of provisioning one of those units and then aligning your use cases to doing it. And I think one of the areas where consumption is often gets a bad reputation or some negativities to it, all pricing models have trade-offs. With consumption, it can be sometimes difficult to forecast.
Mm.
And so within the product itself, we've made sure to provide ways to track usage for the customer, insight into who's using the product and how they're using it to get ahead of those concerns. And then we're also looking at ways to do on-demand and auto-scaling efforts as well, so that users can get an amount of predictability and have the system grow with them in time. So we think the consumptive model is attractive just because for a new technology where people aren't incredibly sure where they want to deploy it, or they want to see how to deploy it and scale it over their environment, it ends up being a much cheaper way of getting in and starting to use that over time.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It lets people take baby steps into it, right, as they go.
Yep.
So, obviously, you're spending a lot of time in the AI security space more generally, not just with Copilot. So, what are you seeing attackers doing, leveraging this AI capability? And can you talk about how we're helping with that as well as Microsoft? Because, of course, as great as AI is for defenders, of course, the same technology can be used by the bad guys, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's always one of the concerns. Again, with the new technology, is trying to identify what risks are incurred by using something like that. So the one thing that Microsoft does broadly across our entire AI ecosystem is we take the responsible AI seriously, and that's comprised of not just things like hate speech or um, looking for suspicious activity or making sure that the model doesn't do anything odd or it could be offensive, but it's also thinking about the vulnerabilities that might be exposed by this technology. So we've responsible AI is built into our system. For any interaction that happens from a user model perspective, it's engaging our responsible AI classifiers. We have pretty extensive processes inside the company to dictate what types of features can go out and whether or not they've been red teamed. So everything goes through a red team review and a deployment safety board prior to release. So there's a considerable amount of infrastructure that goes into protecting our own ecosystem. And of course, users can log in with identities, and with identities, there's always risk there as well. But we support, conditional access policies and MFA out of the box, especially for anyone that uses Active Directory. So we get the protections of the ecosystem, if you will. From an attacker's perspective, generally what I see, and I've actually written a generative AI system to go and process these research papers because I see about for the year so far it's hovering around 200 papers. I see about 10 to 20 a week. It's just not possible to keep up with all the innovations and breakthroughs that are happening, and so I just get summaries every morning of the research papers that came out regarding security. But it sort of falls into a couple of themes of trying to jailbreak the model, prompt injection techniques, and then of course, as you stated, the fact that defenders can use these models for good means that also attackers could abuse them for bad. And so, just about a month ago, something to that effect, we did a report between Microsoft and OpenAI that actually disrupted some of the nation states that were leveraging OpenAI to kind of take advantage in crafting phishing messages or potential phishing messages, assisting them with coding that could potentially be used for some of their operations. And so there's a level of transparency that we work with our partners when requested to provide that threat intelligence and make sure that nothing nefarious is happening. But at least in our product offering, we go through a pretty extensive amount of process and procedure to make sure that what we ship to our customers is safe.
So, Brandon, how is Copilot different from other AI enabled security products on the market? Because, of course, we've said even in Microsoft that 2023 and onwards is the year of AI, and we're now in the whole era of AI. So, of course, a lot of
Hmm.
folks are announcing security products, and there's a lot of information for people to take in. So, what's different specifically about Copilot for security?
Hmm. I think when I look at the market, this is what's interesting to me, and I was talking to some of the analysts over at well, the bigger analyst firms about this because the market itself is still very much forming. There's a lot. What the analysts kind of summarized to me is that they've never seen so much hype around a technology and so little demonstration of its use. And I think that's sort of indicative of what I see in the market as well, that there's only a few competitors to Microsoft that I see that effectively have used the GPUs, the limited GPUs at their disposal to do something interesting in the security space. So where I see us being differentiated is the fact that we have already a broad security portfolio and that we've embedded generative AI into those solutions to help augment the existing ways in which our customers are operating. This to me is table stakes in a way. Like this is expected that we should make our products function with generative AI. I'd say where I believe there's still differentiation for us compared to other solutions I've seen is the standalone interface that we have because it is trying to reimagine how work gets done. And so you asked like, what does it mean for smaller companies or can this help with the staff shortage? And one of the surprising pieces of feedback that I've gotten, I guess it's not terribly surprising, but it's always nice to hear, is when people look at that standalone interface and we explain to them maybe what a prompt book is. And a prompt book's just a series of prompts that complete a workflow or achieve some sort of outcome. We show them that prompt book and we give them a second to read it, and they read each step that the prompt book takes. And they often turn to us and they say, this is great. I understand immediately what this product is doing, and I'm not in the security space. And like, I literally, this is the first time I'm seeing the product. And I think that's the power of natural language. And so I don't know if conversational interfaces are the best interfaces and the final form for generative AI, specifically across an operational space like security or IT. But at least for the moment, I think the attractive bit is in the differentiated piece is our natural language driven interface where you can design automation and workflow by simply just typing in the prompt that you want to do. And we have a lot more investments that we're making in that interface that make it pretty exciting from my perspective. I see a lot of companies generally trying to pursue the concept of agents, these self-autonomous ways of completing work. And while I think that's further out, I do think it's possible to assist a user more in their workflows today by having the model suggest the steps that they would take and maybe even execute it on their behalf, obviously with their consent. So I would say that's where I see the differentiation for us.
Hmm. Now, my this could be a tricky question, but because we've talked about all
I'm ready.
the very interesting and very very exciting features. We've talked about quite a few, like the prompt books and the embedded
Mhm.
experience and plugins. But in your opinion, what do you think is the most transformative part of Copilot for security? If you had to pick one bit.
I mean, I really think it's that natural language paired with the prompt books. And I don't know if prompt books remain in their final form. I want to get them to a state where, when I look at the product today and I use it myself, like I have to spend significant time as I would outside of any, in ChatGPT or Claude or whatever. Any generative AI system has its idiosyncrasies. You got to get familiar with the model and you got to learn how to prompt. That part of prompting, the natural language is the most attractive bit, transformative, because it means that I don't have to understand the interface. I don't have to be a security practitioner and know what every conceivable term or piece of vocabulary means. Like the model's at my disposal. And when I'm confused, I can just ask for help. So that's incredibly powerful and it allows people to be vulnerable as well. Especially in security, I can imagine someone who's new being hesitant to maybe not ask what principle of least privilege means or a particular acronym in the space. And what I love about the natural language interface is that it gives someone the freedom to be able to ask that question within their own session to get the answer back, and it helps them learn. So I think that's a transformative component. And then when I think about that tied into automation, being able to describe the steps that somebody would take in just a regular old manner. It's very flexible and kind of can be up to interpretation. Um, it's super interesting. It kind of changes the way that you would perform automation. And this space has tried to do automation before. I think back to SOAR, where we had the days of Demisto that was acquired by Palo Alto Networks and
Mm,
Phantom that was acquired by Splunk. There was a big interest in the time of trying to automate a lot of the drudgery out of security. And I think where those systems suffered was they were rigid. They were rigid in the sense that they were pairing, some level of natural language processing to a series of APIs to try and achieve a task. But if the data was ever slightly off or the answer wasn't quite correct, the automation would break. And it didn't give people a lot of confidence in the system's ability to do the job effectively. And it also didn't have reasoning capacity. So it was like that one or zero outcome made it very reductive for people to work within. And I think that SOAR will have a resurgence, kind of a SOAR 2.0, if you will, or a natural language SOAR. And that to me is like the most transformative thing, is that if we can get to a point where we're not using specialized configuration settings or specialized tools and we're democratizing security, as you had pointed out earlier, I think that becomes a deeply attractive way to transform security and make it attractive for people who have less experience, but also make it so that people can kind of do more jobs. They can be more effective in the day job that they have today.
yeah, I think I agree with you. And as someone who worked with the sort of older style SOAR automation, I know exactly what you mean about it being
Yes.
very rigid. It's great as long as you're doing a very specific thing with it, right?
Yes.
So, I've asked quite a few of our guests this, but I want to ask you as well. If someone who is tuning in today is thinking about starting with Copilot for security, of course, we've talked about all the different features, that it's natural language, and that the pricing model is consumption, so it's a low barrier to entry. But do you have any more general advice in terms of how an organization might start to integrate Copilot to see if it works for their organization?
Yeah. Yeah, I think what we're going to see over the coming months is, new positions get formed as generative AI takes hold in the consumptive market, and more people get exposed to the technology. They get more comfortable using it. I think for a business that was adopting Copilot for security today, naturally, if they're an existing Microsoft subscriber, I would say immediately kind of activate the embedded experiences for the respective products that your teams use, because that doesn't require the understanding of how to prompt or some of the complexities involved with generative AI. It's a very seamless and easy experience that provides immediate out of the box value. But I would also say that even though the technology is still forming and we're still learning things about it, that there's uh, value in peeling off some folks in your teams to take a look at this new way of working. So using natural language, figuring out how to prompt, looking at non-deterministic systems, creating workflows, trying to identify like where, we talked about SOAR maybe not working and being too rigid. Is there an opportunity to take some of those previous use cases that didn't really pan out or they are working today and make them even better and more effective? So I'd say, if I had to balance it out, given that I know most businesses don't have a lot of free time and they certainly don't have a lot of free resources, I'd say 80/20 would be a good rule, that 80% of, try to get the embedded experiences working for what you might already have today. And then I would put 20% into looking at the natural language driven experience, but also investigate what it would mean to develop a plugin. As somebody who's more developer inclined, I wrote a plugin in an hour for one of my services, uploaded it to Copilot for Security, and I was getting information back. So there's like this magical feeling of being able to kind of extend the capabilities of the system. So I'd say like beyond, just being able to figure out how to prompt, it's also just getting familiar with this new development ecosystem, which is a lower barrier to entry as well. The users don't have to understand or be super proficient in code. That the plugin system is pretty flexible and easy to use. And most anybody that can kind of take a look at an existing API is just familiar with the documentation would be in a good position to be able to develop a plugin and just get familiar with it. That would be my recommendation is I don't foresee this stuff going away. Of course, it's going to evolve and get better. But just because it's not fully worked out and there's maybe some bugs in the system, it doesn't mean that it's not worth your time. And in fact, I think it would be beneficial for most teams to have some sort of understanding as to capabilities.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think everyone's got to spend at least a little bit of time getting up to speed with
Yeah,
AI and
find
data.
the way to make it interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, Brandon, I could definitely talk to you all day about Copilot for security, but I know that you are a very busy man. So, I think we'll have to wrap it up there. But thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Thanks for having me. This was great.
And for those of you at home who've been tuning in, thank you very much for joining us. Also, I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Copilot Lead Speak. Tune in when we'll have another episode in a couple of weeks' time. And until then, take care and see you on the next one.